evening, everybody. This bell was gifted to us by Roy Lewis. He's actually a captain in Fremantle, so now we have a nautical-themed bell rather than having to tap a pint glass. How good is that? Marvellous. My name is Christian Mauri. Together with Robert Dobbs, we organise these events once a month under the umbrella name of the Fremantle Network. These events are called Politics in the Pub. For those of you who have been before, welcome back. It's lovely to see you. For those who are fresh, welcome. It's particularly nice to see you. I won't go on for very long. Safe to say that tonight's topic is stopping violence against women. And the topic has been requested again and again by somebody whose handwriting I'm sure that I recognized. And it ended up to be Sarah Davis. So Sarah is emceeing tonight. I just want to, before I read her bio, I just want to say, when we were preparing this, I was very nervous, to be honest. I was moving house, I was finishing a new book, I was working, and I was overwhelmed. And I told Sarah, and Sarah just said, hey, do you want me to take the lead? Do you want me to take the reins? Volunteered, was not asked, did so extremely gracefully, and she nailed it. She completely nailed it. Look around, there's so many new faces here. It's terrific. So before I introduce Sarah properly, I'd like to just give Sarah a round of applause for her work this month. So that you know what to expect, as the evening is going on, the speakers will speak, and then there'll be a break for you to top up your glasses, go to the bathroom, and maybe get a nice curry, and then you'll come back for a Q&A. All that I would like you to keep in mind is that this is a warm, amicable environment. Politics is about how we can better live with one another. So if we can leave with new mates rather than fewer, everybody wins. Okay, let me introduce Sarah Davis. I'm sure a lot of you know this already. Sarah is a Fremantle-based community organiser, campaigner, and long-time hospitality advocate who has been actively involved in local grassroots movements for over 25 years. With a career deeply rooted in Fremantle's hospitality scene, she has built strong connections across the community, and this is extremely true. I know that can sound like just rhetoric. It's not rhetoric, it's extremely true, extra true. Using her venues and events to create spaces for meaningful dialogue and advocacy. Sarah spends much of her time volunteering for local community organisations such as Freocast, just over the road, and is currently studying journalism and broadcasting media at ECU, way far away from here. She hopes to use her studies to deepen her understanding of the media landscape with a view to continuing her work in platforming marginalised workers. Please give a round of applause to Sarah.
I would like to begin tonight with a disclaimer that this topic is very heavy. There'll be terms used tonight that women in this room, myself included, have experienced or are experiencing. Tonight we'll be confronting a topic that is both urgent and uncomfortable. The issue of male violence against women and its prevalence in Australian society. An issue that seeps into our homes and our workplaces and into our communities. It is an unspoken threat reducing our freedoms, limiting our voices, and in the most extreme cases, ending our lives. When we talk about male violence, we are not just talking about physical abuse. Male violence includes emotional manipulation, coercion, isolation, financial abuse, and the list really does go on. In Australia, on average, 1 woman a week is murdered by her current or former partner. Their stories of terror, of silence cries, and shattered futures are our collective loss. For those of you who don't know me, which is not very many of you, my name is Sarah, and as Christian said, I'm a very local, lifelong hospo worker, community organiser, and advocate. I also grew up in a home marred by male violence, and I spent the formative years of my adolescence in a deeply coercive and manipulative relationship. Until the age of 10, my family and I lived under the constant threat of my father's violent behaviour. My mother the victim of his mental distress and addiction issues on what felt like a daily basis. The constant threat to her life, an unnerving and terrifying reality, and part of mine and my brother's daily existence. The night she finally was able to leave, we actually sought refuge in Fremantle. A fact that actually only clicked into place for me as I wrote down these words, and maybe a small sign that I was always meant to end up here and become a part of this community. The generational effects on women who experience this type of abuse are deeply insidious, and at 13 I found myself in a relationship not unlike my mum and dad's. His deeply controlling and manipulative behaviour led me down a path that echoed my mother's experiences almost identically. Although I was able to leave after the first time he threatened my life. It was subtle at first, telling me what I could wear, who I could see, giving me the silent treatment for days if I stepped out of line. It quickly escalated into violent outbursts, punching walls just inches from my face or abandoning me on the side of the freeway and leaving me to walk home in the dead of the night, simply for changing the radio station without asking permission. I was 15. Before I knew it, I didn't have a single person to reach out to for help. My huge group of friends, dwindling to just him, his plan to isolate me, executed to perfection. Thankfully, after 4.5 years, he ended up cheating on me anyway. But something inside me snapped when I found out about his cheating. I saw my life, or my mum's life, laid out before me. I saw the cycle so vividly, so perfectly obvious, and I saw the opportunity to break it right there and then. I'm not saying I didn't fall prey to a man's control ever again. I did. In fact, I have had more negative male experiences than I've had positive. But I only have 3 or 4 minutes to introduce this topic, so I can't go into too much detail. Tonight we'll be joined by 3 speakers. They will each have 6 minutes to speak with a 5-minute warning as they reach their time. We'll then take 10 minutes for drinks before we sit down to a Q&A segment for the evening. I do ask that should you think of a question as the speakers are sharing, that you write it down and mull it over. Please ensure that it's thoughtful and safe, and above all, succinct. Please also be aware that as a team we have made the decision to include a male voice and perspective on this panel. We as a team are of the opinion that this topic is not just a women's issue. Until we address the very real problem of men's mental health and wellness as a societal issue, women will continue to die. We want to highlight the need to bring men in on this conversation without placing blame or further exacerbating societal division. So without further ado, please welcome our first speaker. Shoma Mittra. Shoma Mittra is an author, former journalist and ghostwriter who believes storytelling is vital to human existence. She started her career at Rupert Murdoch's Star TV in Asia before transitioning to print journalism. After moving to Perth in 2006, she founded Right Click Writing Services and has since helped publish over 250 books, specialising in memoirs and self-help. Shoma is dedicated to preserving personal narratives as a way to protect our socio-cultural history for future generations.
Thank you, Sarah, for that wonderful introduction. And you've virtually said it all in your story. There's very little I have to add here, but I will nevertheless do my 6 minutes. So Sarah has said, yes, I'm an author, a former journalist, and now a ghostwriter. I want to preface this by saying that I'm neither a clinical professional nor an expert on domestic violence. My perspective comes from observing and reporting on this issue from the outside in. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to witness many things and interviewed many people, but it is only recently, as I was writing 2 books, one on narcissism and the other on domestic violence, that I have really come to understand the far-reaching impact of DV on individuals, families, and communities. This is a topic with no easy answers. What I've learned is that domestic violence is not just a personal issue. It is societal, one that demands our collective attention and action. Domestic violence most of the time lurks in the shadows, hidden behind closed doors and shrouded in silence. It's a topic that many find uncomfortable to discuss. Yet it affects millions of people worldwide, regardless of age, gender, race, or socioeconomic status. However, one of the most striking things that I've observed is the power of storytelling in breaking the silence surrounding domestic violence. There are hundreds of books and podcasts on the subject. I have interviewed wonderful police personnel, lawyers, and therapists who have enlightened me on this subject. It is when we bring things out in the open without pointing fingers that things begin to happen. When survivors share their experiences, it not only helps them heal, but also empowers others to seek help or offer support. These stories humanize the statistics and make the issue relatable and real. However, reporting on domestic violence comes with great responsibility. We must be careful not to sensationalize or oversimplify these complex situations. It's crucial to provide context, highlight available resources, and avoid language that blames victims or excuses perpetrators. As I did my research, I learned the importance of looking beyond individual incidents to examine the systemic issues that contribute to domestic violence. I realized that when it comes to domestic abuse, factors like economic inequality and cultural norms are immaterial. It happens in every section of society. I've also seen the vital role that community organizations, shelters, and support groups play in addressing domestic violence. These frontline workers are often our unsung heroes, providing crucial services and support to those in need. One of the most challenging aspects of reporting on domestic violence is confronting the misconceptions and myths around it. Many people still believe that domestic violence is a private matter or that victims can simply leave if they want to. And I've heard this so many times in the interviews that I've done, but it is not as easy as it sounds. My personal opinion is that we have a responsibility to educate the public about the complexities of abusive relationships and the many barriers that victims face when trying to leave. We have to make people aware, both men and women, about things like coercive control and relationship red flags. A crucial aspect is the importance of prevention. While supporting survivors is essential, we must also focus on addressing the root causes of violence and promoting healthy relationships. This includes educating young people about consent, respect, and equality. I found that researching and writing about DV has allowed me a deeper exploration of the issues. The long-term impacts of domestic violence, the process of healing, the systemic changes needed to address this problem effectively are necessary within our society. And I'm so glad to see that so many of you have come here to support this cause. You should give yourselves a round of applause. But how does one go about this? We need to shift the power dynamics. If you are a victim or a survivor, first, 1, stop blaming yourself. 2, stop feeling guilty. It's not your fault. 3, don't negotiate with the narcissist. It never works. And 4, don't allow them to trigger you. In concluding, I'd like to quote Rebecca Zhang in her book, Slay the Bully, where she says, realize the 3 C's. You don't cause it, you can't control it, but you can get away from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoma. I forgot that I was supposed to time everyone, sorry. Sorry about that. Next up, we have Ryan Corbould. Ryan is a new member of the Preventing Violence Together team, working to implement WA's primary prevention framework and engage more men and boys in prevention. With a background in advocacy for sexual violence survivors in Canada, he has supported survivors educated on healthy relationships and developed trauma-informed policies with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He believes men should be strong advocates in ending violence against women. Please welcome Ryan.
Hello. I just want to start saying thanks for the opportunity to be here. This is a really fantastic opportunity for me to get to talk about this. And in particular, I do want to thank you, Sarah, for being willing to share your story today. As was just mentioned, storytelling is really compelling and it really drives people to act. And so really thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. Just to really briefly say something about PVT. So PVT is the primary prevention peak body for WA. So similar, if you're familiar with our watch, if you want to ask me more about that later, please do. But we've implemented the primary prevention framework for the state to help with the workforce development. And It's an interesting place, having worked in violence prevention as a man, something that is most often perpetrated by men. It's a delicate space for me to be in, but it's something I'm very passionate about. Something I want to address when we're thinking about how we can get more people is to talk about this, is the complexity of this issue. As Shoma mentioned, there's no easy answers to this. And I really relate to that because even people in the sector like me who think about this and talk about this day in, day out, we live and breathe this field, we get it wrong. We're always trying to be reflective, and we're always trying to figure out what we can be doing better, and there's things that people really should know that often they don't. And those conversations affect the recommendations that get made and how things get funded, and it can be really, really problematic. So when we're talking about getting more people involved, unfortunately we have this propensity to sort of think that people are just going to go along because we're very confident in what we know and very confident in what we do. But I don't think that's a realistic expectation for everybody to be able to jump into these conversations, because even we don't know everything, and even we get things wrong sometimes, right? Because the reality is that, as has been mentioned a couple times, this is a difficult conversation to have, and most people are not in a place to have an incredibly complex and nuanced discussion about it. Particularly in my work, where I'm trying to engage more men and boys in this discussion, a lot of men don't generally have some of the knowledge that is just needed as a baseline to engage in this conversation, and there's a lot of really honest reasons for that. It's not most of the time from a place of malicious intent or defensiveness. It's honestly because a lot of men just don't have opportunities. Sometimes they don't get the chance to come to an event like this where you can listen to somebody speak about it and learn about it and hear somebody's story. Often maybe it's because they have had that opportunity, but they didn't quite get that next step of, what do I do now? And I think it's incumbent on those of us that want that engagement to really go to them. And that's where we kind of hear this phrase in Men and Masculinities work, where we talk about meeting men where they're at. And we've come around to a place where we mean that quite literally, in terms of actually physically going to the places where men are to have these conversations with them and leveraging topics that are of concern to them, as Sarah mentioned, around men's mental health and suicide awareness, suicide prevention, even violence between men. There's so many things that are important to men and so many struggles that men have that really tie directly into these root causes and drivers of violence that we need to address and bring men in on. So the reality is, when we talk about primary prevention, we're talking about a whole of community approach, and that means that everybody has a role to play. And historically, we've really only been leveraging half of our resources in violence prevention, and we need to really, to the credit of the women that have been doing this work, we've made amazing strides, but we need to leverage the other half of the resources to get ourselves across the finish line with this. So I think really where I'm at with this conversation a lot recently, in terms of wanting to make this more accessible to people and wanting to be more engaged, I think we really need to spend a lot of time going back to basics and really understanding very basic things about this. I think what Sarah talked about at the start around prevalence and who is disproportionately impacted by that. Those are great things to understand. Those are great things for people to know that a lot of people just don't. Understanding the difference between primary prevention and early intervention, which again, if you'd like to know more about that, please ask me later on. Understanding these basic things so that we can have informed conversations, and particularly with men. When I say the word gender to a lot of men, they don't include themselves in the word gender. They don't necessarily think that applies to them. They think it applies to women, it applies to trans people or non-binary people, right? But it's so much broader than they're accustomed to thinking, right? So, we've got to reach out to them and offer those opportunities to just have these really basic conversations. And one of the things that we're talking about a lot in PBT right now, but also nationally, is about how we can be more subtle about this and talk about violence prevention without even necessarily using the word violence. So, if I can just, am I good? I'll just leave with some basic actions that I really think are important for everybody to be able to take in the course of this discussion. Is especially for men, open your mind and just be ready to listen to people and hold some empathy and compassion for a lot of these discussions, because I think you find if you open yourself up and listen to people, that's where we start to change our mind on these things and go down this path. So thanks very much, everybody.
Our last speaker for tonight is Stephanie Monck. Stephanie is the Principal Legal Officer at the Women's Legal Service WA, a role she began in May 2021. She is a proud Kangaroo woman, Warramungu woman, and is recognised as a traditional owner of the Finnis River and Little Wagate Land Trust in the Northern Territory. Stephanie brings extensive experience across government, non-government and tertiary sectors alongside overseeing the legal practice. She is dedicated to ensuring that Women's Legal Service WA provide accessible and culturally secure services for Aboriginal women.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Christian, too, for these earlier introductions. I have to marvel at this younger generation who can just have their phone there with their notes on it and go from it. Look, but before I go on, I must pay my respects and acknowledge that we are on Waiula, which is Wajakuna Buja, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledge that their lands and waters were never ceded. I work in family domestic violence every day of my working day, and so do my other 17 lawyers and support staff at the Women's Legal Service. It's a never-ending story for us, and of course, every woman's experience is different. Common theme, family violence.
Is there anyone sitting
Hold this for a second.
We were posed a couple of questions. Sorry, we were posed a couple of questions on coming to this event. And the first one was, how can we make this accessible conversation without alienating or creating division in our community? Well, I've got a question to that is, does it alienate and create division? I don't have the answer. In any event, it's a discussion that, as we all would agree, it needs to be had, and albeit it's an ugly discussion most of the time. And I appreciate what Ryan said about engaging the other half of the resource in this discussion is our men, because we all know that the majority of perpetrators of family violence are men. And I learned some facts today. I had engaged in a meeting with a lot of other service providers and met with police officers. And I've got some interesting facts which I would like to share with you about the state of WA in this space. Just bear with me while I find them, please. I'm sorry, I will find them.
There's no rush, take your time.
It's because the second part of the questions tonight was, what tangible tools and resources can we impart to the audience, for all of us really, to facilitate conversations around this topic. So in the meeting with police today, I was informed that there were 65,000 calls in the last year for family violence. So you think about that, and the number that didn't call, so that figure would be much higher. Of those 65,000 calls, there was 40,000 offences emanating from those calls. So there might be offences of assault or damaging property or breaching a restraining order. They're developing what they call a high-risk matrix, where they have, at the moment, 50,000 males in WA alone on that matrix. And it's all on their behaviour, so some are worse than others. But we all know family violence escalates, and women lose their lives, one a week in Australia. In Midland last night, there were 17 calls, and there were 12 criminal offences arising from those 17 calls. So if you imagine every metropolitan area, police are out, running out to family domestic violence calls all the time. On a good note, reform is expected in terms of police responses. At the moment, if police attend a family violence incident, they can issue a police order. I'm not sure if you know about them, but a maximum is for 72 hours. Well, that's no good if it's a long weekend, because what it doesn't allow is for a victim in that period of time to consider, does she actually want to go and apply for a family violence restraining order? So there is moves afoot to extend perhaps the length of a police order to perhaps a week. So that's a good thing. Sad but good. Let's talk about Aboriginal people in this space. Aboriginal women don't report as often as non-Aboriginal women, or as much as, because we fear our children being removed from us. And in the Kimberleys, 100% of the children in protection and care are Aboriginal. Where else can we go for support? Well, social workers in hospitals, they're a great resource to engage with if you know anybody who needs any help in this space. Centre for Women's Safety and Wellbeing, they're another good venue or organisation to approach. Community Legal WA, they have a list of, you can actually find legal help on that, so that's for free legal advice if you need it, and they don't just, not all community legal centres do family domestic violence, but you can do there's a tool on the Community Legal WA, if you put in what you're looking for, if you're helping somebody look for some help in any legal space really, try there. Family violence hubs, there's one in Armidale, which Women's Legal Service are a part of. We offer legal services to women who approach that hub. There's one in Broome being sort of built and ready as we speak. It was announced in 2022, but it's still not working yet. Mirrabooka, there's one, Yarlajookan it's called, Healing Centre, and there's one in Kalgoorlie, Marapuni Healing Centre. So they're all good resource places for if you want to assist and guide women, you can direct them to those places. Women's Legal Service have a lawyer placed at Luma, which is a women's health centre in Northbridge. So a lot of women, especially called women, I must say, they can visit the health centre and their partner or husband will think that they're going in there for health advice without knowing that there's actually a lawyer based in there as well. And that same, we have a partnership with the Kalgoorlie Goldfields Women's Health Centre, Care Centre in Kalgoorlie. Same thing. Women go there for health needs, but at the same time they can see a lawyer if they need. Our Kalgoorlie one is done on an outreach basis, but she's also available anytime. She does, meetings with clients, either on phone or Teams meetings, that kind of thing. Women's Legal Service, we work in the areas of family violence, of course, has to be one of the factors. We do parenting matters in the family courts, some divorce. We do protection and care of children. We do family violence restraining orders and criminal injuries compensation in the space where it's assault by a family member or sexual assault. Women's Legal Service also has a sexual assault legal service, which is a new pilot. It helps victims perhaps navigate their way, even just to go and make a police report or through the criminal process if someone's been charged with an offence in that space. And you would have all read last week about Adam Lusk, about 97 convictions out of 100 charges, where he was stupefying, raping and filming the women that he was abusing. Okay, that's not family violence, but it's certainly violence against women. I want to touch on just briefly some things that Shoma raised in terms of about the myths, and I'm not going to read all the answers, but these are the myths around family violence. Family violence is rare and doesn't affect many people. Well, you heard Shoma say that there's no barriers, no societal barriers. It happens across all our community. And I can speak personally to that. I ran the domestic violence team for the Northern Territory in Darwin. They have a different family violence regime up there. But it's 70 odd, there's like 70 odd restraining order applications a week in Darwin Court alone, and some of those are police officers who are the offenders. So just to bring that point home, okay, it's not just, people tend to think it's in the lower socioeconomic bracket. Of course there's a high incidence of it there because strains on them are more. Another myth is that family violence happens because men get angry and lose control. No, family violence is about gaining control, not losing control. Family violence happens because women provoke men. Well, we all provoke each other now and then. Violence is a choice. You cannot blame the victim. If a woman was in real danger and would just leave, if she hasn't left, it can't be that bad. Well, no one ever asks the question, why doesn't he just stop? Why doesn't he leave? Why does the mother and the children have to go and run away and try and find a refuge or sleep in their car? Okay, these are all, of course I don't have the answers for all of those, but that's the dialogue. Shift the dialogue. It's always been victim focused. Let's focus on the perpetrators. And what help do they need? And I appreciate what Ryan was saying. It's a space that men and the good men in our communities have to get together, and you have to support each other, and all of us participate in ending violence towards women. Yeah. And last myth, which I'll touch on, is that lots of women make false claims about family violence to exaggerate how bad the abuse is. Well, yeah, of course there have been false claims. There's been false claims made about many things. But they say, this is in Victorian statistic, and I dare say it's not much different anywhere in the country, 80% of women who experience violence from a current partner don't contact the police. So they're the unreported ones. And that goes back to Aboriginal women. Aboriginal women don't report, because it's not just police engagement, it's suddenly the Department of Child Protection as well. And lastly, I'd just like to touch on the family court and their attitude towards family violence. And this is Australian, Federal Court of Australia and Family Court of WA, and I dare say all territories and states of Australia. Safety is a right and a priority for everyone. It's the principle that they're guided by. Family violence affects everybody in a family. Think about the children. They suffer, they witness it, they're traumatised by it. Of particular concern is both the immediate and longer term impacts of family violence on those children. Family violence can occur before, during and after separation, and we all know that after separation is the most dangerous time for a woman. And it also affects their ability to engage with and follow proceedings in the family court. So I'll just end with thank you for listening, and yeah, we're all responsible in our communities to have this discussion and assist people in need in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll see you all back here for question and answers.